Thank you for joining us this evening, the regular scheduled council meeting of the Park City City Council, January 23rd, 2018 at 7 p.m. Daniela, would you call the roll?
John Leonard. George Glover.
Here.
Ben Salcida.
Here.
Melvin Kerr.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
George Capps. Brandy Bailey.
Here.
Jim Schrader.
Here. Can you call that first name one more time?
John Leonard.
Here.
Okay.
A quorum is present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Tonight, Pastor Dwight Burford is going to lead us in the invocation, and Councilman Tom Jones is going to lead us in the pledge. If everybody please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. George?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
And John?
Second.
And Ben?
Yes, I'd like to see if we can amend the agenda to add in there. I guess that would be under approve the or amend the agenda to discuss employee pay raises, as discussed in the November meeting.
Okay, so you have something to present to the council for pay raises?
I'd like to have a discussion. So how would be the best? I'd like to open up for discussion as far as concerning the healthcare savings that we had from 100,000.
Okay.
So
George, do you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, I'll amend that.
And John?
I guess I just had a question. Isn't there a process? I mean, right? I don't like adding things to the agenda at the last minute. I feel like sometimes the public sees it as a sneaky thing to throw on. It's not on the agenda when it was published. Is this something that could wait till the next meeting that we could put on? Or, I mean, I know is there a committee or some stuff going on right now with that?
There is, but we have nothing to talk about at this point. So
okay, so there is I would be fine with adding it to the next meeting as long as we can have a public discussion maybe at some point here on.
Or even in your council comments afterward.
Sure.
We can always talk about it then, but I just sometimes, I'm not against throwing things on the agenda at the last minute, but I feel like sometimes it can be looked down on by the public.
okay. So
I'd be fine with removing it as long as it's something that we do discuss here at some point here. Or if there's some sort of update there on that at all.
okay. Just in the process I had laid out, I said by the end of February I'd have something back. So I don't have anything to talk about at that point until the end of February.
Sure.
So what do we want to do?
So for point, I guess I should withdraw the request to amend.
So George, you want to go back to the original approval of the agenda?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and approve it.
Okay. John? Okay. Are you good, Ben?
Yeah.
And you can catch me afterwards if you have a question. Okay. All right. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Okay. We don't have anything this evening for awards or presentations. Nobody signed up to speak at public forum. So we'll move on to our staff reports. And we'll start with our Director of Public Works, Rick Norman. Rick?
Park Department had worked on the facilities and sidewalks 11th and 15th. If you recall, we ended up buying this special product to put on the concrete here because the concrete was too new. We ended up getting a pallet of that. I think it was cost was over $4,000 on that. We've used about a half a pallet in 2 storms. We've been pretty conservative with this, given the cost involved with that. If you remember, we had talked about treating the parking lot. So we had equated about 7 pallets of this, and it looks like we're going to come in under that, so hopefully we should be in good shape. Did you have a comment, Mr.
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
Also, our street department also had 2 rotations of snow and ice treatment for the winter storms. We used about 50 tons of material on the 11th and about 60 tons on the 15th and 16th on the streets. I think last council meeting, Jack had given council an update onto the traffic signals that the new cameras that we had put up. In the process of doing that, we discovered that one of the pole boxes on the northeast corner was buried under a sidewalk. So we had to remove 2 panels of sidewalk and put that back in order to get the cameras put up. So we got that completed. We've still got the sidewalk covered because of the cold weather. We've got that blanketed, so we'll open that up in, I think, about the end of the week. Also, last Friday, we accepted delivery of our new Bobcat. This is really a great addition to our equipment. We're thinking it's going to be our main source of snow and ice treatment up here at the new administration center, if it ever gets to that. We're still hoping for not a bad season, but we will have the new Bobcat if that's going to help us quite a bit with up here. The Water and Sewer Department, the average work orders per day for the first 2 weeks of January was 18. Questions?
Rick, could you just cover a little bit about the sewer lift issue that we had?
Sure. The issue that we had with the controller at the main lift station, this is where maybe 90% of the wastewater passes through this facility. It gets pumped to the plant. We had had an issue with one of our pumps, or what we thought we weren't pumping. We done extensive troubleshooting on that. Pumps were okay, variable speed drives were okay. Our PLC went out on that. What that situation is there's always a flow going into that plant. How that works, the controller turns the pumps off and on, and that may run anywhere from 3 to 6 times an hour, so that's in continual operation. When I can't control that, somebody would have to be down there 24 hours a day to turn a pump off and on in order for that flow to be pumped. We had a controller that went out and had to replace it.
Thank you.
We didn't exactly have the luxury of time on our side on
No, I
that.
did not. Does anybody have any questions for Rick? Rick, once again, as always, when the storm and bad weather comes in, we appreciate the crews out first thing in the morning, getting the salt down and working on the streets. So
Thank you,
it's
sir.
always a warm feeling in the community when we see the trucks out rolling, cracking on. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from our Chief of Police, Chief Boston. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Tonight I wanted to, for staff report, talk about our staffing and our hiring situation, give you an update on that. I also wanted to give you kind of a picture of the hiring process. I get a lot of questions about the hiring process, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity to present that. So the first thing is where we're at right now as far as our vacancies. We have one administrative lieutenant position that's vacant, been vacant for several months now, since about June roughly. 3 police officer positions, and they've been vacant various lengths of time. You can see on the slide there or on the handout that you've got. Of those positions, there is one that's been filled, and we have an officer who's going to graduate this Friday from Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center. So he'll be coming out to the field here and doing his field training for the next 3.5 months. So that's where if you see kind of a discrepancy there, it says 3 open positions, and then it goes down, there's 4 positions listed. One of those is actually filled, and the officer's at the academy. So another position, we made a conditional offer of employment, and I expect that person will be coming on probably later this week, and we'll be working here for about a month before the next academy class starts at the end of February. So that'll put us in a position of having 2 police officer positions that we've filled, 1 left vacant, and then the lieutenant's position is still vacant as well. Moving on to the next slide. This shows you kind of a picture here. These numbers may be slightly off because these are a few days old, no more than a week. So since we started the hiring process, we've had 123 applications that we've received. People submit applications through HRE Partners, the online portal, but we don't do anything with them until they fill out a personal history statement. The personal history statement is a document. It's about 30 pages long, but that's the first thing we have to have from them when they apply with us in order to begin processing their application. The last couple of years we've done it this way. The reason that we make them submit that document first is we've had so many people in the past. Those 123 in the past, we would have mailed them this document, and on average we would get maybe 10% back. So we were wasting a lot of time up front for people that were maybe applying for unemployment benefits, and they needed to apply different places, et cetera. So it was a lot of wasted time. Of those 34 that submitted the personal history statement, and by way of explanation, just real quickly, that statement is basically where you've worked. It's like an expanded application, where you've worked, but it has more information. references and a lot of other questions as well. But 24 of those 34 were either disqualified or have withdrawn from the process. We had 9 so far that did the written testing, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Excuse me. And 4 polygraph exams were given. We had, I know, 2 that failed the polygraph. It's not really that common for someone to fail the polygraph. It really isn't. We had 10 first contact interviews that are in queue right now. What that means is they have submitted a personal history statement to us. The first thing we do is have them come in and meet with our detective for an initial interview. He goes over the document with them, asks them questions to make sure it's complete and so forth. So it's kind of an initial interview, gets fingerprints and a photograph. And then out of that whole group, we've had 1 conditional offer of employment, and I believe we will be hiring that person. I need to talk to HR about that first. So we are reviewing the remaining applications that we have right now and looking for more prospects. We've got, I think, around 10 that are pending. I mentioned earlier we've got 1 officer that will graduate January 26th, and then the next academy starts February 26th, and hopefully we've got 1 officer to go to that. Code enforcement on the next page, we've got 1 position that's been vacant since September the 5th, and that is our officer who's in the police academy right now, was code enforcement officer before, so that's his position that's open. We've been taking applications since the 25th of September, 47 applications received. You can see the list there, it kind of whittles down as we go through. We do written testing at the Workforce Center, and this is something that is free to us. It doesn't take a long time. People can schedule around their schedule when they want to go and do it. It's done on the computer. But it's been very valuable for us to see how well someone's able to, can they basically operate a computer? We're not looking for computer technicians. We're looking for someone who can just use a computer. Can they read and write? Things like this. We've had 2 interviews, 1 that didn't show up for an interview that scheduled it. And so at this point, we're down to 2 applicants that we're looking at. And we're still receiving more applications. I'm hoping that we'll be able to fill that pretty soon here. The next page is our organizational chart. And I thought it might be helpful just to show this as a picture of where we're at with the overall staffing in the police department. We have 21 employees total in the police department. 17 of those are commissioned law enforcement officers, including myself. So we have 4 civilians. 2 of those are in records and 2 code enforcement. So you can see where we're short here. If you look at, and there's 1 mistake here, by the way, the first shift shows 3 officers, police officers. It's actually 2 on first shift and 3 on second shift. So, but you can see if you look at third shift there, where we have 2 officers and a sergeant, 1 of those is always on days off, and then the other 2 are working. So if any of them take a day off for any reason, we have to work 12-hour shifts or bring people in to cover for that. Okay, the next thing I wanted to cover was the process. Again, I've had a lot of questions about this. I've had, and I understand the questions, because if people aren't familiar with the process, I can see why these questions would come up. One common question I get is, why haven't we been able to fill these positions? It's been a while. Are we being too picky? That's one question. To boil it down, usually it's phrased another way, but that's the gist of it. It's, are we being too picky? To answer that, no, we're not being too picky. I know there's a lot of things I can't share with you, details. If I could, I think you'd understand. When someone comes in and applies for a police officer position, And the first thing they do is lie on their application. We have a lot of that. You would not believe how often that happens. Or their dishonesty shows up at some place during the process. There are a lot of things, that we can overlook in someone's background. Obviously, no one's perfect. I've had that question, or not question, but more of a statement. Nobody's perfect. Well, absolutely. I mean, there's none of us that are perfect. And there's a lot of things that we can overlook. There's a lot of things that we can't. And those are the things that have shown up that generally why we have to disqualify someone. Okay, the timeline here. And I want to explain, first of all, this is an example. I'm just using this as an example. This is not set in stone, okay? So some of these pieces can be moved around as far as the order in which they happen. We don't necessarily have to go lockstep 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that. There are certain things in the process that have to be where they are, but there's a lot of them that we can move around. And we do that now. We've done that for at least the last 2, 3 years or so. The way things used to be done, and this was pretty much across the board for law enforcement, you'd have a hiring period where you'd accept applications, and then you'd cut it off at a certain date. And then you'd move everyone to the next step, whether that was written testing, and you'd wait till they all got finished, and then you'd move on to the next. So everyone moved as a group. We don't do that. If we see someone who looks like a promising candidate, we'll start moving them through the process as quick as we can, or we'll shuffle the order of when we do these things. So again, this is just an example, but in this example, let's say we advertise this month to hire a police officer, which we are right now, in fact. You can see where we advertise. This is not a comprehensive list. I think some of these also post advertisements in other places. I think HRA Partners does that. But we advertise, and the next thing we do is receive the applications, which must include the personal history statement before we proceed with them. And then there's a first interview with the detective. The next step is the written testing, and you can see, it looks like a long list. Actually, they can do all this in one day in about a 4-hour period. They take half a day off and go to the workforce center. They can complete all of this. The one written test there is called Nelson Denny Reading Test. We didn't used to give that test. We used to give another written test. That's the first test they do when they get to the academy. Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center gives that to them the very first day. And we've had a couple of experiences in years past where someone went up there that we've hired, and the first day that they were there, they were given this test, and we get a report saying, they scored really low. And that's an indicator of how well they're going to do in the academy. So we decided, why not give it to them before we hire them, so we know how well they can read and write. And that's been really successful, I think. The next thing we do is ask for documents, and you can see there's a long list here. Sometimes people have to ask for these things. They have to be the certified copy of them. In other words, we can't take their copy of their high school transcript. By law, they have to have a high school transcript. So, and people actually manufacture these things, There's been scandals in the past about people that have college degrees and so forth, but those things do happen. So. And the point I'm making is it takes a while to get those documents for most people. So at this point, we're at February, and this is kind of an average. Again, this is an example. It might go a little bit faster, a little bit slower, but I think it's a pretty fair example. The next thing we do is a background investigation. And in this example here would be the month of March. And that's actually pretty quick for us to do these things, but a lot of electronic checks as far as criminal history, looking for warrants. I can't think of recently anybody that we've had apply that has an active warrant, but that has happened. I've seen it happen before, where someone has a warrant for their arrest and they're applying for the police department. We look at their driver history. Our insurance company for the city has certain criteria for people, city employees, that they will not insure them if they have certain things on their driving record. So we have to look at that. We look at the courts, and there's the list for you. So I won't go through all the details. If someone is a certified law enforcement officer, if they've been through the academy and they're certified, the very first thing we do is ask for their records from KSC Post, which is the Commission for Police Officer Standards and Training, and they are the ones that keep the records on police officers. So if an officer works in another jurisdiction and leaves for any reason, quit, they got fired, whatever it might be, that agency has to report to CPost the reason for that. So that's the very first document we ask for, and it's unfortunate, but very often that disqualifies people that have applied for this, that are certified. Not always, by any means, but. Okay, on the next page, I'm sorry, polygraph test, show the month of April. So we're into the month of April, and you'll see a whole bunch of stuff shown for April because some of these don't take that long. All right, on the next page, we have an oral interview board. That's generally with me, Dana, our HR director, and with the operations lieutenant, Caps. The next thing we do is review all the background information. I was going to bring in a notebook tonight with me, and I forgot it. So, but on the average, the notebook that we end up with is about 2 inches thick on an applicant by the time we're done. There's a lot of information in there. Once the person's gone through all these things, I have a final interview with them myself. I just like to have a one-on-one interview where I get a little bit better feel for the person. And then if everything looks good at that point, we give them a conditional offer of employment. The conditions mean they have to pass the psychological and a medical exam. We have to offer them the job before we can give them those tests. The post-offer testing that we give them are the medical exam and the drug screen and the psychological testing. The medical exam now includes a functional capacity evaluation. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that or done that before, but it's not a difficult test, but it gives us an idea of, does this person have an obvious disability that would prevent them from being able to do the functions of the job? Not only that, it shows us what level they're performing at before we hire them. So if they get injured later and there's a percentage of disability, then we have some kind of a benchmark to go by. So it's not only helpful to the city, but it could also be helpful to the employee as well. And then the final offer of employment. And you can see all that's being shown in the month of April. And then at the end of April, in this example, we would enroll them in Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center. We generally reserve spots in advance, a couple of classes in advance because it's difficult to get in there. We have to submit their name 30 days before the next class in order to get in. That's assuming they have an opening, but we usually have reservations. If we don't submit their name 30 days in advance, they give their seats away to someone else that's on the waiting list. So you can see the notes up here in the bottom right. In this case, the person finished the process April 30th, but the next available class would be July the 9th of this year. This is an actual calendar of the classes this year at the training center. So there would be a gap from April to July 9 before we could actually, send them to the academy. And the next page, we make every effort, if we can, to get someone employed here. Once we make the decision to hire them, bring them on and do what we can with them here. We've done in the past what we call a mini academy, which is going over a lot of things that, how do you say it? They're important, but they're boring, okay? Policy, procedure, the law. These are extremely important things, but they're not the most exciting. We try to get that out of the way before they go to the academy so that when they come back, they're more focused on things in the field. In this example here, then they would start the academy July 6th and graduate October 12th, and then the field training period is 60 to 70 working days after they graduate. That's a structured program. It's kind of a nationwide standard. It's not just our department standard. This is something that's very common across the country. 60 to 70 working days with the training officer. So in this case, they would be done with that by January the 18th. And so January the 19th of 2019, instead of 2018, they would be ready to work on their own for the first time. So you can see the timeline starts in January, where we're advertising, and then in this example, they are out on their own 1 year later. And that's pretty accurate. So I hope that's giving you a little bit better picture of where we are as far as our staffing right now, and then also what the process entails. So I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
George? Yeah, Chief, I had a question. If you ever have more than one applicant that was really close and you looked at both of them, is there any way you can hire both of them at the same time and put them through the academy? Have you done that or looked at that?
Yes, we can. I can't think of any time recently that we've done that. Okay, she's got a better memory than I do on that. So, yeah, we did do that. But
okay, I didn't know if that was an option.
If we have the openings, then yes, we do. And but there would be nothing to prevent us from doing that as long as we have the openings. Usually it's a lack of a qualified candidate.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
Brandy?
I was just curious, is there an age cutoff for such an
maximum age?
application?
No.
No.
There isn't. And I didn't mention this earlier, but the number one quality that we're looking for, that I'm looking for personally, is integrity above everything else. They obviously have to be competent, to a certain level. But if it comes to someone who's highly competent, but they have maybe some questionable integrity versus someone who's maybe, they could do the job, but they're not the A+ student, but they're very, very honest. I'll take the honest person any day of the week. And I think we've all seen the things that are in the media here lately and see, the importance of integrity. So, sorry, I'm rambling. So,
Ben?
Sure. Chief, if I understand the staffing update correctly, the second police officer or open position that you've offered of conditional employment and is accepted, that is different than the one listed on the next page of a conditional offer of employment given, correct?
that's the same one, same person.
Okay, so there's still two very open positions there.
No, we have one who's in the academy. That's why that's shown as being open, because he's not actually working, covering a shift. That's why we show it as open. Even though he's actually employed by us as a police officer and he takes up a position, he's not out on the street at this point.
Okay, so just the two positions on the left at the bottom, and then the lieutenant position would be filled by someone already within.
Right.
Create another vacancy, is that correct?
Yes, sir. And, we could fill that, I could fill that today. There's a great need for that, to be honest, but that would take one of our sergeants out, and then that would mean we'd have a hole there on the street, so that's the reason we've left that open.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Dana, I had asked for the housing permit, how many we had for 2017. Did we have that?
Daniela has that information in the information that was in the book for the adopted budget. So there were 34 new homes and 7 new duplexes built in 2017. And that, to continue with that, this is 2 more homes than in 2016 and 2 less duplexes over 2016. The city issued 171 building permits in 2017, which is a 6% decrease over 2016.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to bring that up because I knew it was some positive information that we had some new housing that outperformed 2016. So even though it was small, it was still in the right direction. That's it for staff reports. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Jim?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
And Melvin?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Next item, item A under new business, is the update on the issuance of the taxable economic development revenue bonds for the purpose of financing the acquisition, construction, and equipping of multifamily housing facility to be located in Park City, Kansas. Mike?
Mayor and City Council, good evening. Give you an update on the apartment project and on the anchor tenant for the Echo Hills project. First of all, on the anchor tenant, who I can't really officially acknowledge who it is, I spoke with the broker who's involved with it this afternoon for an update, and he showed me the site plan that they have, and by the middle of February, I'm hoping in the first or the second week, they should have the tenant approved. It's a national tenant, and so that they can move forward. I know they've been in contact with, I think, the representatives of the tenant, not through the broker or the developer. I think they have been in contact with Mr. Whitson regarding different issues, and I think, and I know some of the representatives of the tenant and or the developer have been with Baughman Engineering regarding the drainage, the street improvements, and then also on the traffic light that I think is already scheduled whenever enough development takes place.
Mike, I just want to add to that real quick that we also know that they've been in contact with our building inspector, Bob Walker, asking questions on permitting too.
Okay. And so in addition to that, I don't know exactly when they'll get under construction, but I think they're planning to move ahead sooner than later. And then obviously there's a process they're going to go through before they can get under construction. So, but that's with them. And then we've got a couple of other users that because of them, or actually one, I think will come whether they come or not, and we've got some other ones that are looking, so that'll really help on the development up there. So,
Yeah, we got a question real quick. John?
I was going to ask you, you'd mentioned in the past, and I respect the fact that you can't release some things. The other restaurants and stuff, you said there was, I think maybe the last time, and pardon me if I'm wrong, but 3 or 4 restaurants that were already, one was firmed up that they were going to come, and a couple others that were taking a look. Has that progressed any further?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got the same. This developer, not only will they be coming in and buying the land where this tenant is going to go, but they're also buying 7 of our frontage lots, and so they'll actually be the ones they'll have to be purchasing or doing land leases from on all that. So,
and that's already been contract signed or whatever. That's already.
Yeah, that was signed in August.
Is Colette Properties still who you're working with on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's the developer. So
Thank you.
mm-hmm.
Okay, George?
So Mike, next month, are you going to give us like a full report saying these are the folks that have bought in or signed into the agreement to develop? Are we going to have a list, or is it going to be ongoing, or?
That'll be up to the developer to tell me what I can or cannot release, and then that'll also be driven by the tenant. And these tenants like to be the ones that make these big announcements, and so it'll probably be driven by that.
I appreciate your report.
Okay.
Thank you.
A few weeks ago, on January 9th, I received a letter from Walker Dunlop, and they're the mortgage broker for the project, and they're the ones that I submit the information to, and then they go to, they submit it to HUD, and then HUD, Housing and Urban Development, they actually are the ones who insure the market rate project. And anyway, I received this email letter on January 9th, and they had been in conversation, back in November, December, with HUD. And anyway, it said, we recommend phasing the site or decreasing the overall development of this application to below 200 units. This avoids the project having to go through the regional environmental review, which could bring up issues around the adjacent wetlands and the Superfund environmental site over on Broadway. Moreover, reducing the unit count would decrease the liquidity required and bolster the demand analysis. HUD's regional environmental reviews have been massive headaches for us being Walker Dunlop, and deals have been rejected when they otherwise shouldn't be. We also were somewhat tortured by the Fort Worth HUD office on a recent transaction in a smaller market, which was Abilene, Texas, that had a similar unit count. We felt the market was robust enough and demand sufficient enough to absorb a similar amount of units. HUD wasn't comfortable with the amount of units and required us to phase it in at 180 units. The Wichita Park City is a bigger market than Abilene, but your site is located outside the CBD and in a much smaller submarket that has limited recent development. This is, on one hand, a plus, noting that there isn't any competing product, but also a risk that does the market really need 232 apartment units? And so what does that mean to the project? And obviously, I wasn't excited after going through the archaeological review process that gave us a significant delay. And now the two issues on a project larger than 200 units, if it's larger than 200, goes through regional environmental review. And so our choice was to keep it submitted as it is, which they're suggesting to me that that's not the way to go. And so what we are proposing to them and to you is we're proposing to reduce from 232 units to 196 units and have asked Jeff Crable to revise such drawing. And what that would entail is we've got 12 buildings, and so we would need to take 2 of the buildings out, and then one building is 16 units and one building is 20 units, and then we'll show that as a green area on our plans, and then we'll have to resubmit it. We'll have to get new drawings updated, and then I have to revise my budget numbers from Weigand Omega Management, revise my construction numbers, both of these to the 196 units, and then we have to update our appraisal, update our market study, which these aren't huge things you have to do, but it'll take a and we'll resubmit. It'll take us about 45 days to get all that stuff taken care of. And then we'll resubmit it in 45 days, and then 45 days after that, we should have our approval. It's anticipated that once we get under construction and, once we're approved on the financing, we're under construction, and then we can go back to them and say, look, we really think this market up here can support the other 36 units, then we can get those other 2 buildings added back in when we get, down the road with the project a ways. And that's what we'd be in hopes of doing. Otherwise, we'd have a 196 unit project, which is still a very nice project. At this time, I'm not asking for more time, but wanted to complete all this information and then I want to, and have a clear picture of what our timetable is going to be, and then come back to you next month, and then lay it all out in front of you, unless you tell me otherwise now. That's what I would like to, I'd like to carry forward. And it's a disappointment, but that there is that Superfund site over there on Broadway, and then the adjacent wetlands is the Chisholm Creek. So, and with that, I was hoping I was coming here telling you this was the last time I was going to get up here because we're going to be under construction, but that's not the case. So, can I answer any questions?
John?
I guess I would say that I'm less concerned about the reduction of units. I mean, I think it's still a viable project at 196 units. That concerns me less. Obviously, not best case scenario. We all kind of hoped back in August that the project was going to be going. When did you say you were notified of this? I know you said.
I received this letter on January 9th. It's an email letter, and then they had, and I don't know how far back they got their information from.
But you didn't get it till then. I understand, so that's reasonable. So the specials on the property, are we back up to date on that before next month's request to renew?
Danielle?
I have not checked.
Sorry, I know that's kind of a cold question, and I apologize, but I guess that'd be something that I'd want to know next month before we get rolling on that. Mr. Loveland, do you know, are we back current on the specials?
I can't remember.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I do want to say
I will make a note about that.
I do want to say that Mr. Loveland did reach out to both Jack and myself right after he got the letter, kind of explained it. I feel the same way that you. The reduction of it really doesn't matter, especially when you just show that land vacant that can still be built on later. And if that helps speed up some of the process or eliminate some of the hurdles, I don't really see an issue with it either. Tom?
Well, I was going to say on the Superfund side, I'm surprised because I think that the reporting on that's diminished. I'm not sure there's anybody updating it right now. They pulled the wells. So EPA has moved on down the road on that one.
We have an environmental study that says there's no problem.
Well, I understand. So I was surprised that they're bringing the EPA up.
Well, what it is, it's this.
Or the Superfund.
Yeah, I mean, it's this, when it's 200 units or above, all of a sudden it goes to these people that aren't from here.
I understand.
And anyway, they just hate going to this Economic Review Committee because it's just all kinds of.
But I think the Superfund site has been downplayed now. It's not what it was 5 years ago. I know we get reports and file them over in the library, and I haven't read the last one, but the person that briefed us on it had very little say, and they said the EPA was pulling the injection wells or the air wells and stuff, and they were looking farther down in town now. So
I told them that.
Might not be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Jim?
I don't have a lot of concern about the lesser units as well, and we're this far down the road. I'm kind of curious to see what you find out in the next 30 days. I understand 45 days to reappraise and redo drawings. That's appropriate. While I think you all know I'm a commercial lender, and while I've not dealt with Department of Housing and Urban Development on a commercial project, I've dealt with other branches of the government's guarantee programs, and they'll drive you crazy, and it's literally because a box is checked because it's over 200 units, and it kind of makes sense. It's good, I can easily see this going to some review board, and they're going to have to.
SBA?
Yeah. I've relayed a few stories, and they'll make you pull your hair out. So let's just say I'm sympathetic, and I'm curious to see what you find out.
And I wanted to add a comment. They like the plan. They like the contractor because of all the projects he's done, and they like the financial strength. And part of that is because Dave Wells Key is part of the. So they like all that. It just that box, And they said we can get around it. We got to take it down below 200. So
probably good advice. Glad they told you before you got further down the road.
I know we should have known last fall, but
Okay, John?
I have the one other thing I want to ask, and nothing else has changed as far as lenders or partners on the project or anybody else? Nothing's changed as far as the team?
Not since the last time I spoke.
Thank you.
So,
Okay. No, we don't have any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Loveland, for coming to
okay,
give us
thank you.
That brings us to item B, which is consider a resolution fixing a time and place for a hearing where the owner of record or any occupant of the garage structure located at 1915 East Fairchild Street, Park City, Kansas, may appear and show cause why such structure should not be condemned and ordered repaired or demolished. Doug?
Mayor and council, this is a do-over. We did this once before, back in about October, I believe. There was a presentation and some information by Bob about this structure, this garage structure. The hearing was set for December, and because of some significant difficulties faced by this family around that time, we didn't go forward. As you can see, nothing's changed and probably gotten quite worse. So again, the reason that this process is kind of so difficult and so far down the road, we're going to do something tonight, but it'll be the first meeting in March before we actually have the public hearing, is because that's what the state statute requires in order for us to do it in a way that allows us to specially assess the cost of the demolition if it comes to that, and we end up doing the demolition for the property owner. So I would recommend that you adopt the resolution tonight, and then at the March 13th meeting, the property owner will have an opportunity to appear and make any case that they might want to make about why we shouldn't tear this down.
Thank you, Doug. Does anybody have any questions, or is there a motion? Melvin?
I make a motion that we adopt a resolution.
And Ben?
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. Danielle, would you call the roll?
John Leonard.
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salcedo.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps. Brandy Bailey.
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
Okay, and that resolution passes 7-0.
That is resolution 980-2018.
All right, thank you. That brings us to item C, which is review council liaisons and alternates to boards and committees. So if you remember last meeting, I told you that I'd kind of like to shake things up. One, just to strengthen the city, where other members of the council get to serve in other areas, learn and grow in some of those things. So I'd had this sent out to you. If you look through all the boards, you can see who's currently on there, some of those term limits when they expire, and then also when those meetings were, so that you could take some time and look and see if there's anything that interested you that you would like to serve in. So really, I guess I kind of want to start at the top. I would seriously like to see things shook up. I would like to see us break this up, get people out of some of the molds. Let some other people do some different things. Really what kind of brought this up was Tom kind of came to me a few weeks ago and said he'd kind of like to be off the CCUA and maybe let somebody else fill in on that. And then when I started looking back at it, honestly, Tom, George Capps, Gary Aldridge have been big hitters. And I'm not trying to ignore anybody else and what they do, but they've always been flexible in their schedules and been able to participate in some things. CCUA meeting's one of those, where we meet at 4:30, and usually that's a job conflict with most people where they can't get to it. We might still have some of that tonight. I know George Glover has been part of the park board now. Tom Jones been on CNT, but I really would like to have some good discussion here and see if we can't come to something here to get some of these, get everything filled up and see what we can do to shake things up a little bit. John?
I guess I mean, seeing what all this is, I guess I would like to ask our newer council members what their interest is in the boards. I mean, I feel like when I first came on, it was the same. I mean, there were several boards that were just locked up. I had an interest in doing, but they'd been locked up for years, and I felt like I just feel like we ought to open the door to the new council members and see if you guys have an interest in something that maybe good, fresh ideas or something to help us grow. So,
And if you look at that, Gary served on many different areas, and now we have a bunch of vacancies in there to kind of fill his shoes. Randy?
I was just gonna say, I'd be interested in the Chisholm Creek Utility Authority. I get off work at 3:30, so it shouldn't be an issue to make those meetings. I'd also have interest in the Board of Health and the Convention and Tourism, so just really wherever.
Okay. If you had to pick two, just to kind of start with, which two would you be interested in?
Chisholm Creek Utility and the Convention and Tourism.
Okay. I don't really have a bunch of people lit up, but Jim, is there anything?
I was going to ask you on the Board of Health. My issue is that I work an 8 to 5 job, so while I really like the CCUA, I'm concerned it conflicts with my day job. So Board of Health, though, when do you guys meet on that? I'm kind of intrigued by that.
The Board of Health is something I can say probably in the last 4 years we met 3 to 4 times maybe. Those times are very flexible. And typically it surrounds a dog bite case that we're hearing, and we can work that with code enforcement if we need to, say 5:30 or something. We've done several of those meetings. Okay. So that one is very flexible.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in that one and as well as the Convention Tourism, just because I was on that committee before being on this.
Ben, I got you.
Sure. I do have one question concerning, because I was looking at some of the appointment and terms expiring and everything, and since this is the first year we've had fall elections versus, will some of these be readjusted then accordingly as far as terms go, or?
With some of them we can readjust, but probably at this point we'd be filling the unexpired term and then we'd just reset it again.
Okay.
But that's been one of the things I've kind of wanted to work on. Because some of them are all expiring in the same time frame, and it'd be nice to spread that out quarterly over the year, that some of those things. But we need to go back to some of those bylaws and just do some adjustments.
I would say that probably, since I was third to hit my button, I'll take out the Convention and Tourism one there, but I'd be interested in the Parks Board, and then also the Planning Commission there. That
Planning and zoning?
Yes, sir.
John?
I guess I was trying to think of a way to do it with the election terms changing. I kind of feel like if you line them up, like right then they were lined up with April 31st, 30th. That's kind of strange. Instead of someone like, as soon as they get on the council, getting appointed to a board, I just wonder if maybe it's better to do like June 30th or June 31st, I guess in this case. But put it to June 30th or a date that doesn't align with an election. I don't know. I guess I was just trying to decide on something like that. But then again, if you have a turnover in the election, you're still going to have 6 months or whatever it is. But if you have alternates, they can also be filled with alternates too, I suppose.
Right.
I guess as far as my interest in the boards, I don't get off work till about 4:30 usually. So the CCUA is the one that I probably wouldn't be able to do. I would definitely defer to any of the new persons that haven't experienced one of the boards yet. I haven't done CNT. I have an interest in that one. And then I've been on Board of Health. I'm willing to give that to anybody if they want it. But the nice thing about that is it's flexible when you set meetings, which my schedule is really tough to do. So, but if someone had an interest in that, I'd certainly yield to that.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I'd also, I've been on the park board for 4 years, so, and also an alternate for The other board there, the convention and tourism. I would be interested in the first one, the Board of Health. Be involved in that, and also possibly the Emergency Preparedness Committee.
I would say on the Emergency Readiness Committee, the one reason we have George and John is just because of their profession, what they did, and I don't know, we could talk about that, but I think their experience level, and unless you see any reason to move that around. No. Okay. So, George, if you pick something else other than that one. You know, you could be the park board liaison as an alternate.
Yeah, let's go with that.
If Ben was the liaison,
Yeah.
you were the alternate, so if Ben wasn't there, you could fill in. And then you can share with Ben some of your experience and what you've done. Melvin, what about you?
Well, I'm on the CCUA. I'm flexible. I thought I'd just be the filler in or wherever
you kind of want.
I'm pretty flexible. So.
I mean, you haven't been on the CCUA long.
Yeah, so I'd like to continue that. I mean, I don't know where else you need in there. Library board, you just have the one, or?
Yeah, I get that one by default.
Yeah. Park and Rec's taken, and
you know, we still need another planning and zoning alternate. If Ben's the liaison, we need an alternate for planning and zoning.
Okay. When does that meet? Let's see.
It's on the third Monday at 7 p.m.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, I just had a question real quick. That bottom part there, that appointment from SCAC. There, are those committees that need to be
yes.
filled as well?
Yeah.
I don't want to go back on. I just stepped off the solid waste committee actually for the county, but they could use somebody there. I didn't know if anyone had noticed.
So would you like to do SCAC? Or I'm sorry, I totally messed that one up.
I'm good. I was just wondering if those were ones that needed to be filled still as well.
Yes. Okay. So would you like to do something else?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, Jim?
We've already got a couple names on it, but I wanted to throw my name in the hat too on the Planning Commission board. Okay. Appeals. And then do we, even if it's an alternative, but do we need Board of Examiners and Appeals? Do we need somebody there? We don't have currently a council liaison. Might need a quick explanation of what that is.
I think normally we have Jack cover that, but it doesn't mean we can't do something else.
That is a board that is Bob Walker's. It has to do with professionals as far as being able to determine if there's some specific things in building compliance issues. So I think we would need to refer to Bob to see the qualification.
Okay.
I think it's professionals that he has on that.
It is.
Yes.
You're not implying that I'm not professional?
And not in your field.
In my field, there you go.
Tom, we haven't heard from you.
Well, the MPO's not on here, and it should be, because that is an appointment by the city for WAMPO.
Okay.
It was SCAC when I got on it, and it's kind of defaulted to me since then. But since they reorganized it and brought more members on, each city of the second class has an appointed, elected, and then they can have an alternate that's not elected.
Which is
right
currently
now,
you and Dana, correct?
right, currently it's me and Dana, and I'm chairing one of the committees, so I'd be willing to stay on, but if I leave that, then it's open for anybody who wants to go down there.
I will say Tom just has a wealth of knowledge on the WAMPO stuff, and it would be good if somebody else could join Tom in on that. I don't see pulling you off being in our best interest because you're so vested in that. But it would be a good idea if somebody else could join Tom on some of those meetings.
When does that meet?
It meets, I had one yesterday at 10 o'clock till noon, and then the one that the representative from here would go to is at 3 o'clock on the second Tuesday of the month. Usually lasts from 3 to 5. That's the actual
That's
MPO
a tough
meeting.
one for everybody that's got the full-time jobs.
And it's an issue with other cities too. And a lot of people show up, they don't pay much attention to what's going on, they vote and they leave and they don't know what they did. So it really, it needs to be more than that if somebody's going to get involved.
And this is about streets and.
It's federal highway money.
Federal highway.
Yeah. The other thing is that I'm on the CCUA, and I don't mind doing the CCUA. It's just in 2 years there's an election for me, and I think that other people ought to be. It's kind of like WAMPO. You can't just show up on Monday and figure out what's going on. You need to be there. There's a lot of history, and it takes some involvement to get up to speed on that.
There's a lot with CCUA.
Yeah. So, and we're partnering
Melvin,
with Bel Air.
how was your first few meetings?
Yeah, it's not like C&T where you go in and every month it's something different and somebody comes in and presents, or like Planning Commission. I mean, there's ongoing stuff with Planning Commission stuff too, but it's pretty, I'd say, I don't know how to put it. It's something new every time you vote on it, or they vote on it and then they leave. This other stuff is long term. So, and I'm like everybody else. I've been on C&T for a short time, and I'd consider doing that for another year or so if I could too. So, but
okay. John,
I see the CCUA meetings are 30 on the third Thursday. I could do an alternate if you needed an alternate, just because I'm kind of hit and miss anyway, and so is being an alternate. But I guess, I mean, just from a council standpoint, I feel like CCUA and the Planning Commission are probably the two most important boards on here. And I guess in an effort to think about future planning and when something, we're not going to be here forever, so just to make sure that we, like you said, it's so important that once folks are gone, that some others can carry the torch and have good knowledge of it.
Just go tell off that CCUA is highly important, and that's 3 members from Park City, 3 members from Bel Air. So when somebody can't make it, somebody really has to jump in and fill in. I mean, we don't want to start showing up to those meetings and be offset in a 3-2 environment. So making sure that we always have a full panel at CCUA it's highly important. So the alternates are just as important as the regular members, because sometimes we do have to call on to ask somebody else to come fill in, and we need to make sure that whoever is an alternate can make themselves available for that. So it's a highly important one to be on. Ben?
Sure. To me, I think it would seem important that each one of us as members are the liaison to at least one committee. So with that being said, I would gladly be the alternate to one of the 2 so that another member would have the ability to be the liaison.
So if we looked at kind of that method, Melvin on planning and zoning, would you want to be the liaison, and then Ben could be the alternate?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, let's just run through this real quick. Board of Health. I've got George Glover has interest. John said he would be willing to stay. Jim would like to jump on there. Is there anybody else I'm missing? Jim?
I guess just other than George isn't here to speak for himself.
Yeah, I think George would be okay with staying the alternate. I don't think he would have a problem with that. And if he would like to do something else, we can make a change.
Okay.
But what if for the Board of Health, let's see. So I automatically serve, so it'll be myself, and then Jim, John, George. John, are you willing to step back from that one?
If
Because we have two other people that are interested.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
All right, so we'll put George and Jim, and we'll keep George Capps as the alternate. Daniela, do you have that? Okay. CCUA, I would stay on that one. And then we have Melvin, we would keep him because he's pretty new to that one. And then Brandy, are you, Tom, are you okay with that change?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we'll put Brandy.
And then again, I don't mind doing these. It's just that there's so much stuff there that somebody needs to get.
So to keep your knowledge, yeah. I think we have George Capps as an alternate. I think we leave him. And then would you also like to be the alternate for the CCUA? Okay. So we'll keep George Capps. And Tom Jones as alternates. Okay. Convention and tourism. So that one's always the hot one. So we got John, Brandy, and Jim, and Tom. Has some interest in that. I honestly, to me on this one, John, I'd almost come back to you as being the liaison for TNT, just in this case for seniority reasons, and this is the one that's kind of the popular one. And that would give you one board that you would serve as a liaison to.
That's fine. I'm like I said, I don't own any of these, so if we need new knowledge in,
I know, but we're trying to mix up the pot a little bit. So what if we have John as the liaison for convention and tourism?
You alternate on there if you want.
Okay. Is there one that you would like to be? Well, you'd be on WAMPO. Okay. Tom as the alternate. So we just kind of trade spots there a little bit. So we'll have John as the liaison and Tom as the alternate. On the Emergency Preparedness Committee, I would suggest we keep that the same based off George Capps' experience and John Lanier's experience. Library Board's already taken care of. We'll look at the Park Board. We had Ben as the liaison, and George, we have you as the alternate. Yeah. Is that what we have? Okay. And planning and zoning, we had Melvin as the liaison and Ben as the alternate. Okay. then for Rampo, we'll have Tom as the liaison, and still Dana, we'll put you on there. Since we got that midday thing, I don't think anybody.
Dan attended a couple of meetings, got it all figured out, so, yeah.
Did we miss anybody, or does anybody feel like they're not getting to participate? It's not quite even. Randy, we don't have you as an alternate anywhere. Jim, we don't have you as an alternate anywhere. And there's really no other places to fill.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, as long as the positions are covered, and I'm tackling something new, so I'm good with that.
Okay. Randy, are you good with that? Okay. Tom?
I'm fine. I mean,
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
John?
I am. The thing I was thinking, and I know most of these have alternates, but is there anything in this, or do we need to maybe make a motion for this that, let's just say I or Tom couldn't make it to a CNT meeting, or, I mean, probably more important to be a planning commission meeting or a CCUA, to where we could go through, I guess, the level of secession that we have for the council, or you could designate somebody else to do these. I mean, I think the liaison is probably not as important, because you're really keeping just reporting what they're doing or giving them advice. But I'm just wondering, would that be a good idea?
I would say on in-house boards, we could probably do something like that, but the CCUA, that would not be something that we could come back and tackle just with the bylaws. I don't think we'd be able to get away with just adding some more in there. But we could use, if we have an opening, and if George doesn't want to be the alternate at any one of the boards he's on, that could be split between Brandy and Jen for someone to come back to. Tom?
well, I have one question, and I understand the technical side of the board, but like Board of Examiner and Appeals, I don't know why we don't have a council liaison there anyway, just to be part of the council that attends the meeting and understands what's going on, or the issues.
I think, that's a good point. We could have somebody say, because you want to be a part of the board, which Bob has put together. You'd just be sitting in there for kind of gaining insight to what's going on. There's probably nothing there that would hurt anything.
I think we could bring that back to the next meeting, have an opportunity to speak with Bob and see what the bylaws look like and what is supposed to be on that board. I can't speak to that tonight.
Because that's true. The council member would not be a part of that board, but in the liaison, I know, Jim, you kind of brought up that might be something of interest. Mm-hmm. So we can bring that back.
This is like CNT and some other things. The council doesn't vote. They don't really have any inputs, but their presence there. And I just don't know why we don't do it.
We'll look at it, and then we can bring that one back and see. That's a good point. Brandy?
So when does these take effect? Because some of these, like I said, expire at the end of April. Some are just reappointed in 2017. So when does this start?
If everybody is good with it, I would make a recommendation. Somebody makes a motion that we approve that today, and then let the council vote on it, and then we'll just put this in place.
And then on the CCUA, third Thursday, so that's this coming Thursday, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's in Bel Air, correct?
Yes. So we do rotate annually between where we meet. So we've met in Park City for the last year. Now January we started and we're meeting in Bel Air. Ben?
Sure, so I'd make a motion then that we do proceed with this, a vote here on these recommendations for the boards. Would they be 2-year? I'd make a motion that they be a 2-year appointment.
I would say pull that back, because we have to go by what the bylaws say. Okay. So we can work on addressing those.
Rephrase that to, I'd make a motion that we approve these committee assignments.
Okay. Is there a second? Jim?
I'd second that.
Okay. John, did you have any further discussion?
No, the only thing I was gonna say, and Ben kind of covered this, was maybe at our next meeting or something, we'll review the ordinances or whatever we have on file for term dates and stuff.
I would say maybe not say the next meeting, because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Future meeting.
We're gonna have to look at specific bylaws in each one and kind of fix them probably one at a time.
Sounds good.
But it can be something that can be worked on. So we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. The next item on the agenda is just governing body reports. And Jim, we'll start with you.
Nothing to report tonight.
Randy?
I have nothing tonight.
Tom?
The league's having city days tomorrow. I signed up to go and planning on going. I found out by accident last Friday. And found out there was still time to get signed up, so I did, and be going up in the morning. And I suggested to Jack that we used to get reminded, and we don't anymore, so a lot of things are falling through the crack, and we aren't attending them, and have asked him to have Danielle or somebody let us know when that stuff's coming up in advance so we can get signed up for it. It's like the league meeting last year. They moved it a week, and it caught everybody by surprise. So unless you read the book every month, you don't know what's going on. And I just happened to catch it, and I was in a meeting, and they brought it up again, so I decided to go. So anyway, I'm going to go up there and see what they got to say tomorrow.
All right. Melvin?
Only thing I got to say is speedy recovery to George. So.
Okay. Ben?
First off, I want to say congratulations to former Park City Mayor and Council Member Emil Berquist. He was sworn in as a state representative in District 91 today up in Topeka, so congratulations to him and Raylene as they begin this new journey there in their lives. And then also want to invite anyone and everyone out on February the 10th at the pastry place there. I'll be doing my Convos Over Coffee event. That's a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. there at the pastry place. And then I look forward to having hopefully a very healthy, good discussion on what to do with our employees' pay.
Okay. George?
Yeah, also my prayers go out to George Capps and also to Emil Berquist and his representative position. Also like to the fried pies, the new business we have in Park City, I had a chance to check that out. It was really good. And also hiring, so if anybody needs a position locally in Park City, I would check that out as well. Thank you.
Okay. John?
I have nothing.
All right, before you do that, just real quick. So I've been looking over the gold list, and we kind of totaled that out, and I'm going to pick some low-hanging fruit that I think we can just knock off real quick. Two things that I have on the radar that I think we can handle fairly quickly is a mission statement from the city. So we're currently looking to see if we can find one that existed maybe in the past, so we can bring it out, dust off, and have that be the starting point. The second thing is also work on the design of a new flag. So we'll be approaching CNT to look at maybe helping fund that, because that could be a good convention and tourism item that promotes the city. Once again, you see what the city of Wichita has done with their flag, and they're on car tags, hats, and everywhere around town, coffee mugs. It would be nice to see if we can't follow suit. So I'll be bringing those up in the next couple of council meetings. Melvin?
You said you had something to bring back later on about the salaries and stuff. Do we have a committee together on that, or?
Yes, so Tom and Brandy.
And, okay. That was, I mean, you appointed them, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
They each expressed, well, Tom expressed interest in it at the last meeting, and I asked him who he thought would be good with that, and he said Brandy and Jim, and we reached out to Brandy today to see if she wants to be a part of that, and she said yes.
Okay. How many are you going to have on that, or?
Those two.
Just those, okay.
So we're not going to do any open meeting violations and bring that
well,
up.
No, I'd kind of express some interest in that too, but that's
okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Yeah, so moved.
And George?
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 7-0. Thank you.